It's tax season, and at LifeLock, we know you're tired of numbers. But here's a big one you need to hear. Billions. That's the amount of money in refunds the IRS has flagged for possible identity fraud. Now here's another big number. 100 million. That's how many data points LifeLock monitors every second. If your identity is stolen, we'll fix it guaranteed. One last big number. Save up to 40% your first year. Visit lifelock.com/podcast for the threats you can't control. Terms apply.
Adobe Acrobat Studio, your new foundation. Use PDF spaces to generate a presentation. Grab your docs, your permits, your moves. AI levels up your pitch, gets it in a groove. Choose a template with your timeless cool. Come on now, let's flex those tools. Draft, design, deliver, make it sing. AI builds the deck so you can build that thing. Do that, do that, do that with Acrobat.
Learn more at adobe.com/do-that-with-Acrobat.
CRM was supposed to improve customer relationships. Instead, it's shorthand for can't resolve much. Which means you may have sunk a fortune into software that just bounces customer issues around but never actually solves them. On the ServiceNow AI platform, CRM stands for something better. With AI built into one platform, customers aren't mired in endless loops of automated indifference. They get what they need, when they need it. Bad CRM was then. This is ServiceNow.
Hello, listeners. This week's episode of The Wrong Station is another ugly one and does contain several content warnings. I will pause for a few seconds if you'd prefer to skip ahead. But yes, this episode contains content warnings for references and allusion to sexual assault and incest. Listener discretion is advised.
Wonder-working power in the precious...
Incredible as they seem, are not the results of mass hysteria.
You may wish to adjust the dial you are currently tuned into.
The Wrong Station. I left early on a Friday morning and drove almost 3 hours to reach a small town. Normally, the bank doesn't make house calls, but when somebody invests enough money with you, the point arrives when they stop being your client and you become theirs. Concessions to the normal way of doing things must be made. It was early March. The city was entirely gray, but for a few brown leaves still unaccountably clinging to the fingers of an oak in the cemetery. I took the 400 north and was stuck a long time on the highway, despite moving against the flow of traffic. Everything was flint and slate. Then I hit Barrie and curved up along the dark waters of Lake Simcoe. The radio gave me nothing but a inane pop on every channel, so eventually I turned it off and drove in silence. Past Aurelia, the roads opened up, and I drove alone through lanes of black conifer, with the white ghosts of broadleaves nestled here and there between. This was not a strange or lonely workday for me. I live a simple life. I live alone. I eat alone. I do not incur unnecessary expenses. In the mornings I exercise. In the evenings I cook for myself and manage my own investments. I hang nothing on the white walls of my condominium because I am conscious of the resale value. I'm doing well in life. Soon I will be able to refinance and trade up from my condominium to a starter home, even if the market is bad, which I am resigned that it will be. That's fine. I have scaffolded my life and finances so that I am resilient. My coworkers sometimes make fun of me for being Mr. Perfect. I do not make fun of them for their disordered lives. Past towns where people go to holiday, the black lakes thin out among black woods. This is where you find a town called Thebes. It's on a lake of its own, but the lake is rocky and overgrown, not suitable for wakeboarding or other idle pursuits. I had been given an address, but in remoter places, GPS is not always reliable. I drove up and down a numbered road twice looking for the house. It was already afternoon, and I was feeling frustrated. At this point, I would not return home before dark. So I drove into Thebes and bought myself a coffee at the local haunt. The woman at the counter was unfriendly, which suited me fine. I'm in town to visit a client. I'm supposed to meet him somewhere called Nisa House, but Google isn't taking me where I need to go. I showed her the address. She frowned at it. She was a florid, heavy-set woman with graying red hair. "That's the mansion, right?" she asked me. "What are you, a lawyer?" "I work for the bank." "That figures." Curiosity satisfied, she told me I needed to follow a different logging road of the same number that went up the other side of the lake. The two roads had once been one before a mudslide in the 80s. I thanked her and turned to go. "You know he's a fucking pervert, right?" One or two of the locals looked up from the corner to see how I'd respond to this accusation. They wore battered plaids over their hooded sweatshirts. "That's none of my business," I told her. The locals shrugged and looked back down at their phones. "Figures," said the woman at the counter, and went back to her work. I left. I turned down the logging road onto a wide drive, and suddenly Nisa House emerged from the woods on either side, poised on a bare slope overlooking the flat black waters of the lake. My tires crunched up the gravel drive. The building was large and loomed against a pale sky, a Neo-Georgian symmetry of dark red brick brought far up from the south. The window frames were white, like the whites of staring eyes around their dark, blank pupils. The trapezoidal roofs were all dark slate. There were parterres out front, fenced with low, flaking cast-iron pickets, and down the long lakeward slope you could see the overgrown wreckage of a formal garden. I could envision, in my mind's eye, the wonderful proportion and balance of the house when it had first been built. It would have had a grand effect against the landscape. But the symmetry was ruined by the overgrowth of woods and gardens, and the clean lines were despoiled by cracks in the structure, by the flaking window paint, dullness of bricks and grime of the windows. The overall air was of failed grandeur and desuetude. But the owners still had money. They chose to live like this. As I parked my car, the front door opened, and a woman stood with her arms crossed in the cold. She had graying brown hair drawn back, hard, and her face was perfectly merciless. I found her outfit absurd. She wore a white pinafore over a hard gray dress and black boots. She looked like the wicked schoolmistress in some pastiche of the 19th century. I took a moment to straighten my tie in the rearview mirror before I climbed out. "I'm from the bank," I told her. "I have an appointment. My name is Julian Zoss." She told me, "You're late." An insulting accusation. "I'm 9 minutes early." She half-turned. "You better come in anyway." The smell hit me 3 feet before I entered the actual door. Stuffy, sickly sweet and foul, stale urine and old sweat, rotting paper and, somewhere, a decaying pet. The housekeeper didn't seem to notice. For my part, I flinched, but only briefly, before pretending not to notice either. The front hall was broad, dim, flanked with peeling white ionic pillars, and piled chest-high with clutter. In and among the cardboard boxes I could see stained furniture from perhaps 12 different decades, along with greasy framed portraits and landscapes stacked by 4s and 5s. There were riding crops and saddles, busts and statuettes of stained marble or cracked plaster, and fur coats where the fur was flaking loose, and warped old boots and leather coats moldering, and above all, books. Boxes and boxes of books and books, all bound in peeling leather or worn, stained canvas. Please remove your shoes, the matron told me. I hesitated. The hardwood floors were darkened by a deep grime, and she herself was wearing boots. But her gray stare was uncompromising. Quickly, please. We don't want to keep Mr. McVelkin waiting. I did as I was bidden. She led me quickly through a passage of clutter. Walking along that floor, and then through the greasy black of the once white carpet was like walking on a cast iron that had been indifferently wiped after cooking pork. I could feel the warp and weft of my socks soiling underneath my feet with every step. It was gloomy, almost murky in that house. The day outside was dim, and the threadbare blinds all drawn, and no lights were lit. You could barely see. It was only by the gleam of desquamated gold leaf that I could tell how many of the piled books were classics. Suetonius' name I recognized from my internship days at Pelham's. Lucian of Samosata winked from an open box. Aeschylus in Koine Greek. And rarer texts, the Aethiopica, Rhapsodic Theogony, and a German-translated edition of the extant Orphic gold leaf texts. Please keep your hands to yourself, said the matron in front of me. Don't worry, I told her. I only read digital editions. I have a tablet. She gave me a hateful look over one shoulder and swept through a set of double doors, where one door was unopenable due to clutter, into a parlor where a small pool of open space still existed between a pair of slumping 19th century couches. Please sit. Would you like anything to drink? I could only imagine the filthy state of the cups. No, thank you. Please sit. He'll be with you momentarily. Again, that uncompromising stare. Despite a reasonable concern about bedbugs, I sat, while making it clear with my own stare that I was deigning to. Despite the matron's rush, I was forced to wait nearly 30 minutes for the master of the house to appear. His coming was heralded by the shuffling of footsteps beyond a side door. Then he came through. A tall man, dressed in a fine, gray sharkskin suit many decades out of date, and which billowed all over his shrunken frame like a smock. His hair was white, wispy, his face bloated with the crimson of perpetual drink. There was a white gumminess to the edges of his mouth, but his dark eyes, faintly cloudy, focused on me the moment he came through that door. I stood, and my back straightened as I felt the full weight of those eyes. I could not help but feel the hard mind calculating behind them. You must be the young man from the bank. Yes, Mr. McVelkin. Julian Zoss. I stuck out my hand, but he'd already wheeled his great head round to the gilded drinks caddy in one corner of the room. You will have a drink with me? No, thank you, sir. I don't drink alcohol. But he already had the crystal decanter in one hand and two heavy cut-glass tumblers hanging from long fingers in the other, and was swaying the clutter toward me. I was sure the weight of the brandy bottle would drag him over, but he must have been accustomed to it, for he slung the decanter onto the coffee table, and the two glasses with it, before falling heavily back onto the sofa, wheezing. Pour for us, he gestured with one finger. I poured him a double. Fill it up, he told me. Good God, man, don't play the Jew. The pejorative made me flinch despite myself, but I filled his tumbler almost to the brim. That was far too much brandy for one man. The smell of it burned. And one for yourself, one for yourself. Sir, I don't drink. Fill it up, by God, and drink with me. How can someone trust a man who won't drink with him? Drink with me, by God, or leave this house. I poured myself a triple shot of brandy. At least the alcohol would sterilize the glass. He raised his tumbler with one long arm. To the god of wine, his madness and revels. Reluctantly, I hunched forward and met the glass with my own and drank. Shallowly. The liquid had no taste whatsoever. It was all burn. Across the couch, Richard McVelkin drank his own down like a parched man drinks a glass of water. Another. He put the glass back down on the coffee table's ring-stained teak. I filled him up a second time. And this time his trembling hand raised the glass to sip and not to gulp. "So," he began, "to business then. Well, sir," I told him, "first let me offer our condolences." He waved one hand. "It was months ago. I am furious, of course, but she's well beyond my reach now." I cracked open my leather folio and spread some documents before him. "As regards your daughter's inheritance," he laughed. "Inheritance? Everything she had was mine." I gestured to a few lines on one of the sheets. "We have a handful of accounts in her name only. Inherited from her mother, perhaps?" McVelkin was looking over my head. I glanced back. An 8-foot oil painting on the wall beside me. Some motif of the Olympian gods, but so stained with old grime you could barely make it out. "Mr. McVelkin?" His attention returned. "The assets total around 200,000. He waved a hand again. "What's 200,000? He leaned forward. "Zos, is it?" he asked me. "Julian, I have that right?" Yes, Mr. McVelkin." I was uncomfortable under the direct heat of his dark eyes. "You're replacing old Fenstermeyer. Is that right? You're to be my man at the bank now going forward. Do I have that correct?" "Yes, Mr. McVelkin." His knotted hands grimed the glass with fingerprints. "Then we need to get something clear between us, Mr. Zos. Don't bore me with details. If you're going to be my man at the bank, there will be opportunities for you. But to seize them, you must impress me. Do you know how to impress me, Mr. Zos?" I was annoyed by this high-handed prattle, but it was my job to remain professional. And I am very good at my job. He leaned further forward, a snake unfurling himself. The folds of his suit exuded a dry smell of stale rot as the cloth relaxed. "I'm not impressed by details, Mr. Zos. I'm not impressed by the little crunching sounds your numbers make." "Then what, Mr. McVelkin?" He set down his glass and sat back and slowly spread his arms, raising them like eagle's wings. I could see in my mind's eye what an impressive man he must have been in his youth. Even now, the great span of those arms, the ghost of power in those red-gnarled hands. "I'm impressed by gods, Mr. Zos, and nothing less." It was one of the most bizarre things anyone had ever said to me. Yet, I confess, in the moment, in the presence of that old man's charisma, they had a certain effect upon me. "Mr. Zos, do you have it in you to become a god?" I considered that for a moment, folding the portfolio on my lap and sliding home my pen within its loop. I sat back and crossed my legs. I studied him. A great intensity was burning in those clouded eyes, like when the summer sun blazes beyond a haze of rainy cloud. Was I impressed by him? No, of course not. He was a wreck, and I was quite sure he wasn't sane. And yet, as I said, he had a certain effect. "I am not sure how to answer your question, Mr. McVelkin." He slowly lowered his arms, gummy lips widening into something like a smile. But aren't you? Look at how you sit. I can see it in you, Zos. That fearful pride. Careful, boy, or it'll eat you up. Pride from a mortal is hubris, but pride from a god, well, that is only natural." I kept myself unresponsive. "I still don't quite take your meaning, sir." But I allowed a small smile to show at the edges of my mouth, so he would read into it what he would. He saw that smile, and it had the intended effect. He smiled back, and drank his brandy like water, and refilled himself with the pure liquid, leaving a sheen on his heavy lips. "I think you begin to, Zos. I think you are the kind of man that I can work with. Come." He put his great hands on spindly knees and slowly raised himself, pausing only to pick up his brandy as he swayed toward a door on the opposite side of the room. I took up the brandy bottle and followed him, leaving my own glass behind. What do you know of the ancient mysteries, young Zos? The door swung open at his touch, revealing a long, dark gallery with sharp-limbed trees tangled on the other side of grimy, floor-to-ceiling glass. I laughed. I only know the mysteries of accounting, Mr. McVelkin. And you will learn something today. Come through. There were paintings on the long stone wall in here, great 10-foot canvases done in oil paints, all lifted up in heavy gilded frames. But as my eyes adjusted to the gallery's strange light, I found that they were all clumsy paintings, childish apings of some Flemish master's style. Do you recognize the story of this painting? I squinted at the vague figures, the crude gruesomeness of the subject. Zeus castrating his father, the Titan Kronos. Again, that ghastly smile of his. He was missing teeth. Very good, he told me, taking a drink. And the painter, can you guess who it is? I squinted at the canvas. The work was his own, I was convinced. One of the Dutch masters, or maybe Italian. One of the greats, I'm sure, but I don't know enough to guess which one. That delighted him. He drank deeply with a little dry chuckle and patted my shoulder with his heavy hand. No matter, he told me. It's the story that counts. He brought me along to the next canvas. Which god, do you think, was the greatest of them all? Zeus, of course. The subject of this painting was the thunder god himself, committing one of his many rapes. But consider this. The primeval titan Uranos, castrated and usurped by his son Kronos. Kronos, his son by his own sister Gaia. Kronos himself, castrated and chained by his son Zeus. Zeus, his son by his own sister Rhea. Each generation of the gods, their essence distilled and purified until the perfection of Zeus, the emperor of all creation. But then, surely, the son of Zeus must be mightier still. I tried to remember who the son of Zeus might be. It was my job to humor the old Rex delusions. I suggested Hercules. Heracles, a latecomer, a meager demigod. There is another, far older, attested in the oldest Dark Age texts of ancient Mycenae. A true god and not a demigod. The heir of Zeus, he said, is Dionysus. He put all his grandeur and gesture into the name. A trick of the light, the day seemed to darken as he spoke. The god of wine, I said. Far more than that, said he. Not the pretty youth of Caravaggio with the grape leaves in his hair. The real Dionysus is a fearsome god. The god of mysteries and madnesses and revelries, the roarer, wild lord, the god below, the liberator who eats raw flesh, the twice-born god, yes, he is most mighty and most terrible of all. McVelkin reached up to brush fingertips across his own painting. There, the horned god was birthed from the testicles of Zeus. But consider this, young Zos. He went on. He handed me his glass to refill, and I refilled it. He drank gratefully, continuing his thought between gasps and belches. Heracles, the son of Zeus and Princess Alcmene. Dionysus, the son of Zeus, and, so they say, the Princess Semele. Why one a demigod, the other one a true divine? I had no answer. I endured his rantings as the day dimmed. Teach me, I implored. He swilled more of his liquor. I had never seen a man drink so much, but he seemed no more or less drunken than when he'd first appeared. The god twice born, he told me, as if imparting priceless lore. He turned to his own works. From canvas to canvas, the theme of Zeus's ravishments returned. He seemed to find deep meaning in the motif. I will confess something to you, young Zos. I am aware of my age. I feel keenly how the king of gods would need an heir. What, if he should fall, would become of his kingdom otherwise? But how to ensure your heir will honor your own works, when Zeus overthrew those of his father, and Kronos overthrew those of his. He turned to me, his eyes wide in the gloom. The key, young Zeus, the key is to ensure your heir is as much like you as possible, that he all but is you. Do you understand what I am saying? I didn't, but I could tell he was warming to me, and that was my purpose at Nyssa House. I'm beginning to, I told him. Say a little more. Give me some brandy then, my God, to shake the dust from my throat. Yes, a good clean pour. Good boy. Twice made wine, brandy. Its taste is very clean, do you not agree? Follow me a little further, Zeus, and gaze upon this next painting in the series. I will tell you. Zeus learned from the mistakes of his forebears. They had gat their sons upon their sisters. A close marriage for mortals, maybe, but not close enough for the needs of the divine state. Yes, and so, Hesiod will not tell you this. It was sacred wisdom of the Orphics. Zeus tried to take his mother for his wife. When she would not have him, he took her in the form of a snake. Consider the great sacrilege of that. Would you agree, young Zeus, the ethics guiding gods and men are different? Yet this act of Zeus violated even the laws of his own kind. From that union sprang his sister Demeter, the goddess of the harvest. I was tempted to believe he'd made this sickening little story up. But I thought he was too... I hate to use the word rigorous, too romantic a thinker for that. A wholly artificial notion would not have pleased him. He was the kind of man who'd want to know his ravings held a seed of truth. But the god-king's purposes were unfulfilled, McVelkin told me. See, he took his daughter-sister Demeter as well, and from their union came Persephone. Do you know what happened to her? He chuckled lewdly. I was disgusted. She was kidnapped by Hades, god of the underworld. Here's the secret of the Orphics, McVelkin told me, leaning forward so I could smell the gasoline of his breath. He gestured to another one of his revolting works of art. There is no Hades, only Zeus in his darker aspect. Yes, Zeus Catacthonius, king of the underworld. Think of the Romans, young Zeus. Jupiter above, Dispater below. But these are the same name. Deus Pater, God the Father, and Deus in Greek is Zeus. His eyes were lambent, spittle flicking from his lips. Of their forbidden union, Zeus with his daughter by his mother was born Dionysus. When Hera learned of it, she was furious. She had the Titans rend young Dionysus apart and eat him. When Zeus learned of it, he destroyed them, and of their ashes, and the ashes of his perfect son, he made mankind. This was the first birth of Dionysus. Perhaps it was part of the Father's plan all along, for when the time came to resurrect his son, he went to the mortal Semele and made her pregnant with a lightning bolt. See? Our artist has rendered it faithfully. When this destroyed her body, he sewed the unborn Dionysus into his own testicles and later birthed him thus, his own child by incest 3 times over. The perfect heir. We'd reached the end of the hallway. Dionysus in the final painting, crowned above all the cosmos, ready to begin the depraved cycle once again. The thin scraps of sky, just visible beyond the thicket outside the windows, had turned from dull gray to leaden blue. Last light was going. Before us now waited a set of heavy oaken double doors. Light was shining from underneath the crack at the bottom, and there were strange noises coming from beyond. A shuffling, a puling sound. I poured Richard McVelkin another drink, and he poured it down into him like an athlete parched after a great race. I'm pleased to say my calm was perfectly intact. I asked Richard McVelkin why he told me all this. He said, I said that I needed you to understand me, Zos. I asked him what lay behind this set of double doors. He grinned at me again and laughed. Perhaps he was finally growing drunk, for he laughed, I thought, quite stupidly. Then he said, I asked you if you knew how to become a god, young Zos. He put his hand on the latch and ushered me through into golden light. The air here was thick. It stank terribly of excrement and other fouler smells. The answer is, he concluded, you make gods of your own. They were crouching in a corner of the room. They were unclothed and filthy, their curling hair flowing down their backs. Each of the boys was deformed in his own way. The fingers and toes of one were fused together, lending those extremities the aspect of a cloven hoof. Another's face protruded forward and was smoothly curved. Inbreeding had created what is called a coloboma in the third, a deformation of the eyes that gives pupils the appearance of a cat's eye or a goat's. Among other deformations, seen and hidden, one of the boys had two skin-covered bony masses pushing from his hairline. Have you ever seen the Bacchae, Zos? He asked behind me. I was so taken aback that my wits had failed me. No, sir. Shame, then, he said, that you won't understand. Then the door clicked shut behind me, and a bolt turned. The boys were slowly rising to their feet. I understand now, of course, the meaning of McVelkin's final comment. The word is sparagmos. It means rending. The other word is homophagia. It means the eating of raw flesh. As Dionysus was rend and eaten by the Titans, so his followers would rend and eat raw flesh and drink hot blood. Later echoes of this rite would be known as communion. My senses returned to me only just in time. They sprang at me like dogs, and the impact knocked me back over a soiled couch. They were yowling and panting, their filthy hands clawing for my neck, but although strong, they weren't yet fully grown, and as I fell, I was able to use their own momentum to twist free. I exercise in the mornings. I strength train and see to my cardiovascular fitness. I'm not a large man by any means, but whenever somebody from work has invited me to sports, they have been surprised by my quickness, strength, and coordination. I scrambled up. The boys were up already. I could tell from the brief touch of their heavy hands, a gift from their brother, father, grandfather, that I did not want to feel them round my neck. They growled and began to circle me in a crouch. I put the oldest at about 16, the youngest maybe 12. All of their bared teeth were broken. Sharp. They'd been chewing things that human teeth were not designed to chew. I snatched up a chair to menace them with. It was heavy, oak. I could barely lift it. There were fragments of bone on the floor underneath, but now was not the time to study them. The boys kept their distance for a moment. They knew the first to move toward me would be hurt, and when I made to fling the chair, they scuttled back toward the corners of the room. At the last second, I changed the throw's trajectory, hurling it into a second set of double doors, opposite those that led toward the gallery, and the old brass bolt holding them snapped. I charged forward, shouldered through, and broke into another gallery as the boy gods howled behind me and gave chase. They were fast. I charged down that hall with their claws catching at my jacket from behind, out into a drawing room, pulling down heaps of clutter behind me, which they scuttled over, through the choke humidity of a rampant greenhouse. One of them caught me by the shoulder, and I put my elbow to his face. The others boiled up behind, and I tore free, throwing myself headlong to the locked greenhouse door. The glass shattered, tearing through my jacket, shirt, and forearms. I hit the frozen ground hard and rolled to my feet with shards a half-inch deep in my shoulders and back. Apologies to Brooks Brothers for their ruined work. But I felt no pain, not then. The adrenaline was running brightly through me, and I felt like half a god myself. I stood out in the cold and dark, holding a shard of glass like a knife. The boy gods were just inside, whimpering and growling as they tried to climb through the broken glass, but sliced their hands and arms instead. One of them played with the deadbolt, but couldn't work the mechanism with his cloven hands. I realized how inbred they really were. They couldn't even figure out the doorknob. I let fall the reddened shard of glass. Another type of person might have laughed. But I don't laugh at others for the disordered state of their lives. Instead, I only did what any other person would do. I straightened myself out, picked free the larger shards of glass, and walked back around the house to open up the trunk of my car. I pulled out the emergency blanket, laying it over the leather driver's seat. I climbed in and drove 3 hours south. The following Monday, I gave myself the luxury of a sick day. I live a restrained life, but I am by no means ascetic. I just gotten out of the hospital. One shard of glass had punctured deep beside my spine. An automobile accident, I told my doctor. And you drove all the way here? He was incredulous. Sometimes, I told him, people can do crazy things. On Tuesday, I was called into my supervisor's office. I was prepared with several lies and apologies to help explain our loss of the McVelkin account. But instead, my supervisor broke open a very small bottle of de-alcoholized champagne and poured us both a plastic glass. He loved you, my supervisor told me. I think his exact words were, "A very impressive young man, your Azos." Jeez, what did you say to him, Julian? I shrugged. A different kind of person might have laughed. What can I say? I told her. I'm a people person. As for me now, I live a simple life. I live alone. I eat alone. I do not incur unnecessary expenses. In the mornings, I exercise. I take boxing now. In the evenings, I cook for myself and manage my own investments. From time to time, I take a glass of de-alcoholized wine. I hang no paintings in my house because I am conscious of the resale value. I am doing well in life. Soon, I will be able to refinance and trade up from this starter home to a larger property, even if the market is bad, which I am resigned that it will be. That's fine. I have scaffolded my life and finances so that I am resilient. My coworkers sometimes make fun of me for being Mr. Perfect. I do not make fun of them for their disordered lives. I am grateful for my experience at Nisa House. I speak with McVelkin on the phone from time to time and manage his investments well. He believes we understand each other and are kindred spirits of a sort. In fact, nothing could be further from the truth. He is a fool and romantic, and lives a very disordered life. He thinks his money brings him close to the divine, but he is no closer to Olympus than his sad freak sons and sad, dead daughter. Indeed, I feel a mild disgust to carry water for a man like that. And there are other clients I have, more vulgar still. But I take comfort in the fact that I am not like them. I am on the right track in my life. The Wrong Station is made possible with the generous support of our listeners on Patreon. Join us today at patreon.com/thewrongstation for bonus episodes, behind-the-scenes content, ad-free listening, and additional goodies celebrating our decade of dread. This week's episode, Zagreus, was written by Alexander Saxton and performed by Anthony Botelho. Thank you to Kirsten Dennis, Michelle Van Villet, Molly, Kristen, Dan Baden, Jessica Shipe, Skyla, and Ian for helping us keep the lights, well, off. The Wrong Station is co-produced by Alexander Saxton, Anthony Botelho, and Jacob Duarte Spiel, with music composed and performed by Alon Citrin, and arranged for the viola and performed by Viola Schmidt. You can follow us on social media at The Wrong Station, or email us at thewrongstation@gmail.com. And until next time, thank you for listening.